We'll start today with our first speaker, Natalie. Natalie Farah is a very passionate advocate, writer and creative. She is a proud descendant of a long line of resistance fighters and political leaders. Arriving to this continent as a refugee, Natalie has dedicated herself to fighting for the rights of marginalized peoples globally and for dismantling the structural racism through storytelling. Thank you so much, Natalie.
Assalamu alaikum. First and foremost, we are here on Wurundjeri and Bunurong lands. These lands were brutally stolen and their sovereignty was never ceded. The genocidal project against the peoples of this land continues to this very day, as does their resistance and their struggle for political self-determination. This always was Aboriginal land, and this always will be Aboriginal land. And right this second, this land that we are standing on is Aboriginal land. As a Palestinian Syrian woman, I'd like to explicitly recognize the staunch, active solidarity of First Nations people in the fight for a free Palestine. May we continue to stand together. May we continue to fight together, and may we continue to rise together until our peoples and our lands are liberated. Brothers and sisters, my name is Natalie. I'm a fourth-generation refugee. My great-grandfathers escaped the Armenian genocide from one side and the Nakba from the other side. My grandfather sought asylum in Syria because he was a leader in the Communist Party in Jordan. My father and my mother escaped a murderous regime in Syria, and I escaped with them. In early October 2023, 12 members of my mother's family were brutally murdered when an Orthodox church was bombed in Gaza. Shame! 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 Nothing was ever the same for my family or for me again. I'm often asked why I, living in the so-called peace, security and democracy of the West, continue to dedicate my life to fight for my people's lands and my people's liberation. And my answer to that is simply this: knowing what I know, seeing what I have seen, and feeling what I feel. I cannot and I will not allow my children or their children to be the 5th, the 6th, and the 7th, and the 8th generation of refugees. I will not allow my children to be dispossessed, displaced, bombed, persecuted, and tormented. This stops with me, and this stops with us right here, right now. I want to take a minute to pay homage to my cousin Teresa Helliser. She hijacked an Israeli plane in the 80s because she was trying to force an exchange of Palestinian prisoners. And to that she earned herself a brutal 12 years in an Israeli prison. She passed away a few years ago from cancer, from the torture that she received in those prisons. Like her, I cannot and I will not accept that simply the fate of my family is to live generation after generation in exile from our homelands. Our homelands which are occupied by the very same Western powers that preach safety, security and democracy while they bomb, terrorize and ethically cleanse us. Shame! Shame on this government.
Blood on your hands!
2006 was the first time that I was exposed to war. I was 9 years old. I sat glued to the television in Damascus while I watched Israel invading Lebanon, murdering thousands of children just like me. And their faces are still stuck in my mind. I can still see that little girl who had lost her arm. And they were doing it for the same reason that they're doing it now. They said they're doing it because they wanted to get rid of Palestinian resistance fighters in Lebanon.
Shame!
And I remember after 2006 how I would proudly wear my kufiya to school. And I would proudly salute the Palestinian flag that was in my school's courtyard right next to the Syrian flag. I would proudly spit on the soiled Israeli flags that were glued onto the ground in the ancient city of Damascus in those streets, and I will continue to do that every time I go back to Damascus. I don't know if any of you have been to Damascus or the Middle East. I wish from the bottom of my heart that we get a chance to go, and I hope that we will go when it's all free, and I will take you to my homeland. I did go back to Damascus last year after 10 years in exile. And how was I greeted? How was I greeted in my homeland? I was greeted by bombs from Tel Aviv. On the second day that I was there after 10 years, rockets flying from Tel Aviv into civilian neighborhoods into Damascus because they were exterminating Iranian officials.
Shame!
They have done that every fucking week since October. They're not just bombing Gaza, they're not just killing Palestinians in the West Bank, they're not just invading south of Lebanon, they are a threat to the entire Middle Eastern bloc of people, our entire lands. I don't even want to say countries because we weren't countries before Western powers came into place. This is a little bit tough to talk about, so I really appreciate you holding space. What I'm really trying to say here is that this has been a really, really long fight for my family and for all of Arab peoples. And unfortunately, it will be a long one yet. Many of you are feeling exhausted, you're fatigued. Many of you can't comprehend how such a thing as a genocide is still being allowed to happen. I know that the shattering of your illusions has been shocking and destabilizing, but it has also been clarifying. In the West, more of you than ever before, we're standing shoulder to shoulder with us. You're finally seeing things as we see them. You're feeling things as we feel them, the way that they truly are. And most importantly is that you're taking action. It's the third week since Hume for Palestine called the first HTA rally, and I want you to give yourselves a really big round of applause for being here today. We can do better than that. Can we make some noise? And not just this, because in between the rallies, which now are happening twice a week, community activist groups have been peacefully but relentlessly targeting HTA, targeting Boeing, targeting Albite, and targeting Zim. And just like you, they have been targeting any corporation that manufactures weapons for or does business with the genocidal entity of Israel. And they have faced brutal police violence, and they have faced institutional repression and Zionist harassment. But the people of Naarm and Melbourne have continued to confront, disrupt, and shut down this commerce on this continent. Genocidal commerce that is propping up the regime, that is slaughtering en masse my people, our children, our families in Gaza, in the West Bank, in Lebanon, and Syria. And from the bottom of my heart, I want to say thank you. Thank you for taking a stand in the face of this fascist, murderous, brutal, expansionist, settler colonial state. They call us terrorists because we dare to resist. But who is sniping children in their parents' arms? Who is starving newborn babies to death? Who's sexually abusing women and men detained without a trial? Who is posting videos of themselves blowing up schools? Who is blockading aid trucks? Who is openly celebrating genocide in their national parliament on their mainstream television? Who is dictating the Western news cycle to repress the truth? Calling us human animals. Calling for Gaza to be burned and turned into a Disneyland. Liberation is not a hashtag. It is not a pair of watermelon earrings that are made by underpaid workers. It is not a sticker on your laptop. Liberation is not static. Liberation is an active commitment to constant struggle. And it emerges naturally when you recognize that all struggles are interconnected and interdependent. Liberation is putting your body on the line for a stranger that you will never meet on the other side of the world, because that is the humanity in you expressing itself in the most beautiful form. So, standing here together, side by side, we are demanding that HTA burns its contract with the Israeli occupation forces, that it stops supplying the weapons that are being used to wipe our babies, our doctors, our journalists, our leaders, our families, our very future. Brothers and sisters, this is Palestinian resistance in practice. This is what it looks like. Our message is simple, it is clear. Until HTA drops every last one of its contracts with Israel, we will be here. We will be here, rain, hail, or shine, making genocidal commerce unavailable for your company. We will be here making it more expensive to do business with Israel than to stop doing business with Israel. We will be here day after day saying down with Israel, down with the United States, death to Zionism, and long live the Palestinian resistance. عاشت فلسطين حرة. شكرا.